Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode of Health Discourse with Sakshi and Sushant. So, hi, Sushant. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Sushant, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So, good morning, Sushant.
Good morning.
So, today we will be discussing about cancer because there is a lot of information going around in terms of cancer care, and a lot of people are saying a lot of things about what you should consume in case of cancer. Some people are recommending protein diet. Some people are recommending keto diets and whatnot. So, Sujan, let us begin the discussion. And over to you, since we will be discussing cancer, and this is going to be a bit technical. So, folks, stay tuned for this discussion. Please, Sushant, continue. Over to you.
Yeah. So, before the therapies, right, it is important to understand the the mechanism behind development of cancer, right? So, as we have shared in the previous talk, that cancer is nothing but uncontrolled cell growth, right? And over years, there's so many research papers around it which claims that cancer is a genetic disease. And what we have seen, number of companies, even in India, I've seen handful were telling that we are doing genetic testing to tell you the risk of cancer or detect cancer and all of this. It is all waste of money and time because cancer is a metabolic disease, right? It is an outcome of defected or respiration insufficiency, right? It's about mitochondrial dysfunction. Right? It is not a genetic disease, it's a metabolic disease, right? And so any DNA or genes mutation which happens is a downstream effect of mitochondrial dysfunction, right? So, so understanding that, or maybe blaming your genes is a wrong way to look at cancer, right? And again, there are multiple factors. So let me probably share something. So you can see my screen. Yeah. So, so that's a we will be talking a bit about oral cancer also, but that's a general view of cancer that there is an oncogenic paradox, which is again inflammation. We know is the root cause of every disease, right? Then oxidative stress, then environmental toxins we are exposed to, genotoxin, carcinogenic toxins we are exposed to, viruses, our age. There are multiple factors that impact the mitochondrial health of the mitochondria, right? Again, when there is a lot of these things, these could actually impact your mitochondrial dysfunction. And we all know mitochondria is the powerhouse of our cells. It gives us energy, right? It produces ATP via process what we call is oxidative phosphorylation, right? So it is generally convert nutrients into energy using oxygen in the oxygen environment, right? And again converts into nutrition and the moisture and the breath which goes out. So water and carbon dioxide which goes out. So essentially, respiration is one of the most important aspect of our energy generation, right? So when mitochondria is working very well, it is producing ATP, it is giving energy, right? If you can see this figure down here, right? So it shows that in case of normal healthy cells, 89% of the energy is produced by oxidative phosphorylation, right? Which is electrons. So we know food is an is a combination of electrons, and there's electron transport towards mitochondria and cytoplasm, and again that's how the energy is produced, right? And again, uh, in case of healthy cells, 89-90% is produced by oxidative phosphorylation, right, which is again a basic mechanism of several mechanism of generating energy, and then rest 11% is just substrate level phosphorylation, which is again sort of which doesn't need much of oxygen. What we call is ancient fermentation pathways, right? So if you go to 2.5 billion years ago, right, there was very less and limited oxygen, or they were deficient oxygen, and before even just a second, just a second. Yeah, so I was telling, so around 2.5 billion years ago, there was no less oxygen even before humans came into being. And the organisms grew via fermentation pathways, right, in the absence of oxygen, and that's how there was uncontrolled growth. And then the mitochondria came, which is actually control your cell growth and cycle, right? So it's a kill switch, right? So again, so that's the basic of that's how substrate phosphorylation happens, right? And again, in mitochondria it is through Krebs cycle, and in cytoplasm through glycolysis, right? Glycolytic pathway, right? So again, this is a normal way of you know generating energy, right? But when there's a mitochondrial dysfunction, because and then in terms of that, what happens is that instead of ATP, mitochondria start releasing reactive oxygen species, ROS, right? Which again, as you see in the figure, it damages your cell. It leads to genome instability, damages your DNA, lipids, proteins, right? Nucleic acids, right? So it damages your basic structure of your cell, and structure dictates function. So essentially it impacts your functionality, and then it may underexpress the tumor suppressant gene and overexpress oncogenes, right? So again, when you're talking about the genetic part here, so it is actually a downstream effect of the mitochondrial dysfunction. Right? And the Warburg effect says that these cancer cells generate energy via what do you call ancient fermentation pathways, basically glucose and glutamine. So these are the two sources, right? So glucose, anyways, as we all know, it's a source of diabetes also, but glucose and glutamine is what feeds the cancer cells. Again, glutamine is those non-essential amino acids which we get from food, and also which our body automatically produces, right? So, so coming into the back to the fact that this Warburg effect actually defines the ancient fermentation pathways, right? Which is actually which suppresses your growth, which suppresses your usually growth suppressors, right? It leads to cell proliferation and growth. So essentially, when there is mitochondrial dysfunction, there is ROS. ROS further suppresses oxidative phosphorylation, right? So there is more activation of ancient fermentation pathways. So most of the people would ask, okay, there's no mitochondria, so how cells should go into apoptosis mode, so it should die. But actually, it feeds on the fermentation pathways, right? So again, it feeds on sugar and glucose and glutamine, right? So that's how cells start growing. So the kill switch, which is mitochondria, is no longer there now, right? So it starts proliferate, start growing, growing more and more, and that's how, in this case, the energy metabolism shifts, right? So if you see in case of cancer cells, right, uh, it is 75%, and almost 95% is actually from substitute phosphorylation, so it is through glutamine and glucose, and only 5% comes from the normal energy post oxidative phosphorylation, right? So in the environment of low oxygen, these cells can grow by fermentation pathway, right? So till now, the thing is, this external factors, inflammation, oxidative stress, causes mitochondrial dysfunction, which is ROS, which leads to production of ROS instead of ATP. ROS damages your DNA, your lipids, your proteins, it damages your cell functioning, your structure dictates function, right? So your cell structure is gone for a toss, and then cannot perform function. Some cells are underexpressed, some genes are underexpressed, some genes are overexpressed, right? It leads to ancient. So there is no kill switch. Cells start growing, and they feed on fermentation pathways to feed on glucose and glutamine to grow, right? And again, they don't need. So there is no control. There is no control of cell cycle, and that's how the energy metabolism shifts from oxidative phosphorylation to substrate level phosphorylation, right? So till now, is that clear? Because we'll get a bit of detail.
I think what I have understood, if let us put this in a simple words, that it is actually the mitochondrial dysfunction that is the root cause of cancer, right? Among others, there are other reasons as well, but I think this is the primary reason, because you already mentioned that this is not something which is then genetic in nature. You cannot say that this is a because of the genes, but it's actually because of the mitochondrial, as we can see clearly in the diagram, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
why the metastasis is happening because of the mitochondrial dysfunction at the early level, and it
Yeah.
is
So metastasis, I'll come to a different thing. So in simple words,
yeah,
right? Whatever we're eating, we're feeding our cells, right?
yes,
Uh,
yes,
every cell has this ancient organism, what we call as mitochondria, right? Mitochondria
yes.
regulates energy, give us ATP, give us energy,
So
right?
if my understanding, it is actually like an organelle. It's like an organ of the cell.
Yeah, it's a
When we used to study biology, I remember that in the cells we were studying mitochondria, and it is actually called as an organelle. It is a very important part of the cell, because it
Hmm.
has that all the genetic memory is also there in the mitochondria. It is a
No,
carrier of
it's
that.
so again, it's a structure.
Yeah, it
So
is a
a cell would
structure.
have
Yeah,
genes, it would have protein, lipids,
protein and
nucleic
lipids.
acids.
Yes,
So dictate function doesn't mean the cells are
yes,
genes are active, right? So essentially,
yeah.
uh, so any genetic mutation, right,
Mm-hmm.
is actually is a downstream effect of mitochondrial dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
right? So essentially, this ROS is actually further damages your oxidative phosphorylation, which is one of the way to produce energy, right? To produce ATP, right? So this is all mutagenic and carcinogenic in nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
I get it.
so so
Yes.
so ideally, now the thing is they based on these fermentation pathways restart, and by the way, when you go for a cancer treatment, none of the oncologists or doctors focus on the fermentation pathways. They may or even not aware of it, whether there
Perhaps
is
they are not aware of these pathways, or maybe it is not something which is, I mean, this is something which is not, trackable, or you cannot measure these parameters just like that. Yeah.
as of now. So
So,
so
as
essentially
of now.
again when there's no kill switch, which is mitochondria. Cells start growing, they start eating more because
Mm-hmm.
they feed on glutamine, and the more glutamine and the more amino acids and more the glucose things you are consuming, it is more going to feed your cells. It would be anti-apoptosis, so it will not lead to cell death. And again,
Mm-hmm.
so obviously there is signaling happens. So immune cells, macrophages generally sense in blood biochemically that there's some wound happening somewhere. We need to heal the wound. There's something happening bad in some cells, and then they go they go to the damaged site, right?
Absolutely.
And again they sense it. They go to the damaged site, and then what they do is basically since they are fermenting, right? So the cancer cells are fermenting. And again, they try to fuse themselves. So there's a fusion happening between immune cells and the cancer cells. Again, this is something which biochemistry students would or folks would understand, right? So there's a fusion happening. There is a sort of the cytoplasm of both are actually the cancer cells and immune cells are both diffusing and both
Mm-hmm.
diluting, right? So essentially, can immune cells become rogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
They move from a respiratory level to a
To a
fermentation level, right?
fermentation
So that
level, and
so that
and definitely we understand that when they are fermenting, it is going to cause a problem to the body, right? This is how it is
so that that that's
increasing.
that's what we call as metastatic stage. So they
Mm-hmm.
start spreading at different parts and body organs. So that's with the as you see the fusion with the immune cells, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is here because the immune cells go rogue. The cells are growing because of fermentation pathway, because of glucose and glutamine, and they try to cure it. But again, when they fuse it, they actually uh, move towards a cancerous stage. They move towards a fermentation level, right? And again, the cytoplasm of both immune cells and cancer cells are diluted, right? And again, it leads to metastatic stage, and again spread to body organs. And most of the detection happening at this stage, right? Metastatic stage, right? So again, and then again, what happens is is again a vicious cycle of going for chemotherapy, surgeries, and all of these things, right?
So what does one do to prevent these things? Because I think we were already discussing this yesterday,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
you said that okay, you should prevent this glucose and glutamine. Right? And these are the primary things one
So,
should
so
do.
first,
But
one thing, there's another thing I wanted to stress upon before we move to the therapies part, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so, if you see the perspective here is, so for instance, uh, lung cancer, blood cancer, breast cancer could move to brain, right?
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure about the other. So this is what we call as metastatic stage. So especially different parts. Oral cancer, there's very less than around 1% of the oral cancer may have a metastatic stage where it moves to the brain. Right. Now the problem with the brain here is, now I'm just giving you example of why the standard cancer care may be counterproductive, right? And why people having this metastatic stage of brain or maybe having brain cancer is people do not survive, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because once doctor sees the tumor, it's a very complicated, brain is very complicated, so probably you can't get into sort of thing where you get into multiple surgeries, or probably you go for chemotherapies to cure, because it starts spreading everywhere, right? And it takes the help of the blood vessels. So blood vessels is like a railroad transport. It moves through blood vessels. The tumor cells move through blood vessels to different parts of the brain,
Hmm.
right? So so ideally, what happens is when you go to oncologist, so there's a surgery, there's a wound on in your brain, and again there's a radiation therapy, right? So what happens is, so there's a very intimate relationship between your glia and non-neuron cells and neurons, right? And again, with
Hmm.
what we call
Hmm.
is glutamate-glutamine cycle, which maintains the neurotransmitter balance, right,
Hmm.
in the brain. And again, this found disrupt this glutamate-glutamine cycle, right? And again, glutamate goes and travels, and it's an excretory neurotransmitter, so it travels and it goes. It kills your neurons, right? And again, chronic death, and again, astrocytes pick up glutamate and converts to glutamine, right? So
Hmm.
again, this very fact of using the standard operation care, maybe radiation therapy, or
Hmm.
these or surgeries would provide a fuel, fermentable fuel for the cancer cells like glutamine, right?
Hmm.
So glutamine, so again the cancer starts growing, and again because of radiation therapy, there's a brain swelling, and there's a lot of swelling happens, and again, uh,
Hmm.
the doctors may resort to steroids. Again,
Hmm.
steroids, we all know, increase your stress, leads to hyperglycemia, leads to glucose. Right?
Hmm.
So the very standard of care, which is meant to treat cancer, would actually feed your cancer cells. And there is a research around it which has established for brain tumors, right? Not essentially for all other tumors, right? But this specific brain tumor, so it could be a brain tumor or probably metastatic stage where certain from breast cancer is moved to brain, or maybe from lung it is moved to brain, or maybe blood cancer. Oral cancer is around 1% of oral cancer may have a metastatic stage where it moves to the brain. Right? So again, this is something which is very, very important. So people who are going for cancer care, going for therapies, going for surgeries, radiation, right? It may be counterproductive, right? And again,
I
this
agree.
is some this is something which people are not aware of, that again, what do you mean by cancer care? You're just telling, okay, stress management is okay,
So
fine. Because
basically, the therapy is, I mean, I think then the whole onus comes to your nutrition only, because, before even going to that, you can probably fix all these, things happening inside through nutrition
hmm,
also. I mean, this is
so
something
for
which I am understanding from this conversation. What
so
are
so you
what are
you
your
see this
thoughts?
you see this diagram, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
so, so this is basically for oral cancer, which we're offering a test now, right? So we
Hmm.
look at
Hmm.
all these 7 molecular mechanisms. We see, look at cancer cell energy metabolism. So we look at your specific activator of enzymes, which is causing, which is so fermentation pathways probably, which is fueling your tumor cells, right? For instance, your lactic acid, because again, one thing I forgot to mention, that when there's a fermentation happens, right? So
Hmm.
fermentation, there's a byproduct called lactic succinic acid and pentose phosphate. pathway,
mm,
right? So these
mm,
further damage the oxidative phosphorylation. Okay. So
mm,
these are the
mm.
metabolic waste product when they are fermenting glucose and glutamine. So they release lactic acid, succinic acid, and pentose phosphate pathways, right? And again, if you see, we are here looking at glutamine metabolism, pentose phosphate pathway, lactose dehydrogenase pathways, tyrosine, serine, and CD36 expression. So all these are indicating to a cancer cell energy metabolism. So these byproducts further damage the oxidative phosphorylation, which is a normal way of energy production in the cell, right? So again, similarly, carcinotoxins toxins we look at, so volatile organic compounds, genotoxic potentials. We look at volatile sulfur compounds, right, which is again one of the reasons for bad breath. We look at detox mechanism, like what is your antioxidant defense, or what is your body, how your body is but with a lot of antioxidants, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Then inflammatory activities, then the balance between oral microbiome, right? So there are multiple things what we look at. Now coming out in nutrition part, right? What you were
Yeah,
asking, right?
so yeah,
Yeah.
my question was that I think if this is the case that the metastasis, it is fueling the therapies are fueling this thing. So I think
Yeah.
the onus is on has to be on nutrition in that case in order to prevent this reoccurrence in any
Yeah.
case, or even if before you go for a therapy, it is also
Mhm.
important you can check your nutrition has to be taken care of. I mean that is what I feel from this discussion. What is
Yeah.
your
So,
thoughts?
so again, the cancer care generally people, because when you are in cancer already, you are stressed. So there's a high cortisol, there's high cortisol. So it's hyperglycemia, there's in high blood glucose. Like we all know that there's no brainer here, right? So
Hmm.
cortisol for the stress is one of the factors for type 2 diabetes, which is high, causes hyperglycemia, and again cancer, name of the cancer causes stress and so stress, anxiety, and so again there are some cancer care companies which focuses on the stress management, maybe doing meditation, yoga, and all that stuff, right? That
Hmm.
anyways is a part of the healthy individual or sick individual, that should be a part of
Yeah.
the lifestyle part, right? So again, when it comes to nutrition people do not understand this.
Hmm.
So there are companies who will say, okay, okay, glucose people know, but nobody knows about the glutamine, right? Because Warburg effect says about glucose. The glutamine thing came later. So
Hmm. Hmm.
Otto Warburg never told about glutamine as a fermentable fuel, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
again, nutrition is very, 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 very complex. It's very, very specific, and again, we have to understand individual biochemistry. You can't say just eat protein or eat fat or do not eat carbohydrates or eat fiber. There are multiple molecules in every food, right? And again, how each molecule is metabolized by your body, by your microbiome is what defines a right nutritious diet or not, right? And again, in our case, what we do is, right. So what I'm saying is there are two ways to look at it. One is people who are at the risk, who are smoking. I'm talking oral cancers, who are smoking, drinking, or who have some sort of risk of metabolic diseases, right, should come and do for adopt a preventative approach where we would identify these molecular signals, which will tell you whether probably you are moving towards a cancer, the tumor which has not been shown up, which is not showing up in the PET scan right now because it is asymptomatic, it's an early stage, right? So that is one way of where we measure the change in the biochemistry before the tumor develops, and then provide nutrition to actually eliminate those signals before, so that you do not develop cancer, right? And again, that is
Hmm.
one way. Other way is which is the most prevalent, which is something which would a lot of people need, is preventive reoccurrence. So probably suppose you have gone to a doctor, oncologist, you have got your cancer that ridden because you have got the tumor removed, or probably you've got the chemotherapy done, and you have reduced the tumor size, right? Probably, and then again you are managing your cancer. But again, there's no guarantee that it will not again occur, or it will not reach a metastatic stage, right? So again, what we call is how do we prevent the reoccurrence, right? So here, if you see this entire image here, right? So essentially, you know, we are using the sequencing bioinformatics to measure all this biochemistry, right? Using a machine learning model to identify, quantify each of the pathways. Again,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
if you see this graph here, right? So there's a fermentable fuels. If you see early cancer treatment, there's a high level of fermentable fuel we are consuming, right? And because there's no focus on the suppression of glucose and glutamine as such, right? And again, so in terms of our nutrition, precision nutrition, which we built based on the biochemistry, based on which is completely data driven, which is not driven by any nutritionist or health coach or dietitian, right? So essentially based on how we measure each of these 27 pathways and how we map these with food ontology, nutrition ontology to carve out a nutrition program for your biology, for your uh, cancer prevention or preventive reoccurrence strategies, right? Where the nutrition is actually trying to reduce the consumption of fermentable fuels and trying to put foods into the nutrition choices, which is anti-inflammatory, which is anti-carcinogenic, anti-angiogenic, and angiogenesis, right? And actually, it is going to be it is going to cause the cancer cells. So pro-apoptosis, right? So essentially, that is something what is being targeted here, right? And again, this is something which can be blended with the metabolic therapy adopted by a doctor or by a hospital, right? And again, every for the next 12 months, we measure the impact of nutrition on your symptoms, how the symptoms are going, the cancer is going. So again, there's a schedule of every 4 months we do it, right? And again, we actually, yeah. So that's what I'm telling. So in terms of this, we are trying to, you know, reduce the consumption of fermentable fuels and bring nutrition choices which suppresses your tumor, which improve your antioxidant response, which has a detox mechanism, which suppress the tumor growth, right? So again, it has to be blended. It would be blended with if you're with your oncologist, probably your metabolic therapy, probably you're going for chemotherapies and again, so that could be blended. So again, that is a way where you could prevent the reoccurrence, right? Because you identify the underlying cause, which is not been done by any of the healthcare practice right now. So you don't measure, you don't know what is causing mitochondrial dysfunction. There are multiple factors there. So no, none of the oncologists measure it because that is the biggest gap. And again, if you blend the nutritional therapeutics with the standard modern therapy adopted by oncologists, right, which could help you overcome this. Right? So after 12 months, you can compare and you can actually go for a retest and see compare your score. Right? So that's something which is what we are focusing on, right?
I think this sounds a very it's a very good model if implemented properly. It can work out well for many
Mm.
people out there, who are in a massive requirement of this therapy, right? So Shant, with this we have come to the end of this discussion. Any last words would you like to add here?
So cancer is preventable. It can be prevented. You don't need to be scared of it. It is not a genetic disease. It is a metabolic mitochondrial dysfunction, right? So
Mm.
again, people living in cities have a high risk because of exposure to environmental toxin, carcinogenic toxins, geotoxins, uh, geotoxic potential, which is again all of this. Then inflammation, obviously, the nutrition choices, these all have an impact on your. So ideally, to measure your biochemistry, you can't there could be no diet based on your symptoms, no nutrition based on your symptoms or based on guesswork, right? So again, it can be prevented, and even people who have cancer, so uh, there is a way of uh, understanding the underlying cause and addressing it through nutrition so that you can prevent the reoccurrence. Specifically, we are doing for oral cancer, both preventative strategy and preventive reoccurrence strategy, right? So in preventive reoccurrence, we would be working with your oncologist to probably help understand the root cause, identify the which specific pathways is triggering the pro-inflammatory and pro-carcinogenic potential of your body, right? And also provide nutrition along with which supplements the modern therapy support in terms of preventing the reoccurrence. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sushant. This was a very interesting discussion. And with this, we end this discussion here. We will be back with another episodes, dear listeners. And thank you for supporting our podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Thank you.
Thank you.